Hobby of the U.S. Coast Guard.
Hey, good morning. As Doug said, my name is Matt Hobby. I'm the Coast Guard's Chief of Contingency Planning and Force Readiness for Western Alaska. Wish I could be with you in person today, but I'm glad I can still speak with you over the phone. I'm going to talk about unified oil spill contingency planning, but first I'd like to put that in context with the Coast Guard's efforts overall regarding oil spills. So the Coast Guard does many things. We're an amalgam of a number of different agencies over the history of the United States. Today we conduct search and rescue, law enforcement, vessel and facility security, and environmental protection, among other missions. But they can all be summed up in the first three bullets here. The Coast Guard protects those on the sea. We protect Americans from threats delivered by the sea, and we protect the sea itself. And specifically related to oil and hazardous substance spills, we prevent, we plan, and we respond. We try to prevent spills, but we plan and practice for when spills occur, when it's beyond our capabilities or our control. And then we respond using those plans. And I'm going to share a few ways that we work to prevent spills in Alaska. First, with the cruise ship industry. Cruise ships are a big deal in Alaska. Nearly 2 million tourists and up to $520 million is involved in this industry and is brought to Alaskan communities. And the Coast Guard is responsible for inspecting cruise ships to ensure compliance with safety, security, and environmental standards. And additionally, we regularly monitor cruise ship transits and moorings to provide security and a law enforcement presence. As far as the oil and gas industry, just like the cruise industry, the Coast Guard is responsible for inspecting oil tankers arriving in Prince William Sound. Currently moving 538,000 barrels a day. That's 500 tankers per year. We also provide a security presence for the infrastructure that surrounds the oil terminals. And all of this, in these slides, these are things that are preventing the potential for a spill if there were someone who would try to do harm to this industry. The Coast Guard also has authority and jurisdiction, including the ports in the coastal zone for Alaska, and, for example, the Port of Anchorage. Just in Anchorage alone, there's 90% of the goods for Alaska pass through the port, and this includes gasoline, heating oil, diesel, and fuel for Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson. So the inspections of vessels and facilities and the security that we provide at the port is also something that would prevent a spill. The Great Circle Route is something of great concern to the Coast Guard. We regulate vessels within the United States. This is a source of concern for us because 45% of the vessels that transit along this route are engaged in innocent passage, which means they pass through U.S. territorial waters, but they're not subject to U.S. laws on oil spill prevention and response. Risk analysis also shows that if there is a spill there, because of weather and remoteness, it's going to be difficult to respond. So as far as prevention goes, we inspect the vessels we can, and we prepare for the ones that we can't. And I know Doug is going to touch on this in depth, but one thing that we're pleased with is a partnership with the Aleutian and Bering Sea Islands Landscape Conservation Cooperative, who applied to the IMO for the establishment of areas to be avoided to increase the safety of the Great Circle Route and prevent spills in the Aleutian chain. One of the things that keeps us busy in the summer months especially is the fishing industry in Alaska and responding to spills due to accidents or discharges from fishing vessels in southern Alaska and also in the Aleutian chain. As far as prevention goes, we do commercial fishing vessel examinations to assist in preventing pollution response. And we have a marine safety attachment right there in Dutch Harbor. That's our main player in the Aleutian Islands, and we augment them from Anchorage as needed. Also on the slide, you'll see a reference to the U.S. and Russia maritime boundary line. The Coast Guard engages in diplomacy with Russia annually to discuss issues that affect the North Pacific, the Bering Sea, and the Arctic, to include environmental issues. Red Dog Mine is the world's largest zinc mine, and the Coast Guard is responsible for inspecting the foreign flag vessels that arrive to receive mine products at the mine. There are about 30 ore ships that arrive every summer and take the ore from the Kivalina area to Asian ports, and they pass through the Aleutian Islands en route. And so, like other Alaskans, we do all this despite challenges. We have challenges of limited infrastructure. Next slide. We have the largest area of responsibility in the Coast Guard with one of the smallest staffs in the Coast Guard. And our assets are located primarily in population centers along the southern coast of Alaska, while threats exist throughout the state. The one concern we share is the retreat of polar ice with the resulting increase in maritime activity in the Arctic. And so for the last few years, including this year, during the ice-free summer months, the Coast Guard takes part in something called Operation Arctic Shield, where we expand Coast Guard presence into the region to coincide with increased maritime activity. And this summer, we had cutters that were up in the Arctic area, and we also had a forward operating location with 2 helicopters in Kotzebue. And we also work closely with the Alaska Army National Guard to use their infrastructure. And the focus of all this is to ensure safe, secure, and environmentally responsible maritime activity in the Arctic region. And a big concern with this, of course, is the increased risk of an incident, whether it's a mass rescue operation, collision, or grounding that could also lead to a pollution incident. One example of increased levels of human activity in the Arctic is the voyage of the cruise ship Crystal Serenity, which I'm sure most, if not all of you, are aware. Traveling from Seward, Alaska to New York City from the 16th of August to September 17th with more than 1,700 passengers and crew. And interesting for this forum is they will be in Dutch Harbor this Friday. So those of you there, lucky enough to be there, could see them this Friday in port. The Coast Guard partner agencies in the U.S. and Canada have been preparing for this voyage for over a year, with one of the things being a potential mass rescue incident. And in fact, next week we're practicing that up in the Kotzebue area. We're going to medically evacuate 250 volunteers along with the National Guard to test our communication and cooperation for that type of incident. And the 250, it's a good practice, but imagine if it was the 1,700. So it's something that definitely is a big concern for us. And it's not just Crystal Serenity. There's 4 smaller cruise ships of up to 200 passengers expected to conduct Arctic voyages this summer as well. And I've heard that they've already started taking orders for next year. So this is something that's going to continue to be a concern. So what do we do for these concerns? And what we do is we try to mitigate risk through our prevention activities that I mentioned, but we plan for incidents and we practice or exercise that plan. So planning all over the United States is shaped by Alaska. The modern planning is shaped by the Exxon Valdez disaster. And in response, both the federal and state government in Alaska established requirements for oil spill contingency planning. And in late 1992, an agreement was reached between the Coast Guard, the EPA, and the state of Alaska to enter into a joint planning process to reduce the number of plans, eliminate redundancy, and increase cooperation. So this diagram highlights how the federal and state planning requirements are satisfied through 2 plans, a unified plan and sub-area contingency plans. So the unified plan meets federal requirements for a regional plan for Alaska and the state requirements for a state master plan. And the unified plan, in conjunction with the appropriate sub-area plan or plans, meets the federal requirement for area contingency plans, and 10 sub-area plans satisfy the state requirement to prepare regional master plans. And we've continued the process since 1992, and it's worked very well, and we take pride in that close working relationship we share between the state, federal, and local agencies, as well as other entities in the planning process. So the Unified Plan is the short title. The long one is the Alaska Federal State Preparedness Plan for Response to Oil and Hazardous Substance Discharges and Releases. It was originally published in 1994. It's been through 3 changes in 96, 99, and 2010, and it's currently being revised. So while the Unified Plan covers the entire state of Alaska and gives general guidance for how we respond to spills around the state, it's supplemented by 10 sub-area plans that you see on this slide. And if a spill were to occur, the Unified Plan and the appropriate sub-area plan would be used together to launch the federal and state response. And you can see here there's a plan specifically for the Aleutian Islands, which includes the Pribilof Islands. And that sub-area plan contains specific information for a response, including local resources, sensitive areas, and wildlife of the islands, and potential places of refuge where a damaged vessel could be stabilized. And when I talk about unified planning, it's not just federal and state. It's not just Coast Guard, the EPA, and the state of Alaska. It's a community product. And the current plan, which was just updated in May of 2015, as a result of a joint effort by the EPA, Coast Guard, the state, Department of Environmental Conservation, the Department of Fish and Game, Department of Interior, and numerous other federal, state, local, tribal, stakeholder, and industry participants. So it's definitely a community document, and it's updated every 5 years. A typical response organization follows the incident command system structure, which a lot of you may be familiar with. In Alaska, between the federal and state, we're strong advocates of the principles of the Unified Command. And what it does is it shows unified presence and decision-making by federal, state, responsible party, and local leaders. A responsible party may use something slightly different, and the federal and state will defer to whatever structure that responsible party activates, as long as it's consistent with basic ICS principles and structure. City and tribal governments are part of this and will often participate as a member of a regional stakeholder committee. And that committee will provide input to the Unified Command through the liaison officer that you can see on this slide as a member of the command staff. So we write these plans, but it's not good just to have a plan, you have to practice. And so we exercise or practice the plan on a regular basis. And we did that in Dutch Harbor to help inform the Aleutians Plan. In September of 2014, we conducted an NPREP, which is a National Preparedness for Response Exercise program. And it involved a scenario where a rock slide damaged the North Pacific Fuel Terminal and created a spill. And this spill was the largest government-led oil spill in the region, and it was jointly planned by the Coast Guard, NOAA, State of Alaska, and North Pacific Fuel. And it helped improve the current plan. And it also engaged the Regional Stakeholder Committee. And this public participation helped us build our liaison capacity and make sure that the sub-area plan was as detailed and specific as it could be to facilitate a response in the Aleutian chain. So to respond to a spill, we need to know about it. So as you work and if you come across a spill or hazardous material release, please call the National Response Center. And that is a 24-hour hotline, and the number is here on the screen, a 1-800 number. As far as providing input to the Unified Plan or the sub-area plan, when we update these plans, we're very proactive, or try to be as proactive as we can be, in reaching out to community leaders in that sub-area. And that's when we're getting ready to do our 5-year update. But at any time we will take input to the plans, and you can do that through the website on your screen, the Alaska Regional Response Team website, the Alaska ART, and that's for the Unified Plan. But for the sub-area plan, you can use that website, or you can contact me directly, and you see my information there. So finally, I leave you with one link here for a website which contains the plan and a lot of information support documents that I mentioned in the presentation. But that completes what I had to share today. I thank you for your time, and I'm glad to take any questions you may have.